She and her children were kicked out of the house by her rich husband. Years later, she makes him regret it. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Amanda sat in the corner of the grand living room, clutching a letter she had found by accident, her hands trembling. Greg, her husband of 15 years, had stormed out of the house yet again after another blistering argument. He was the embodiment of success. Wealthy, respected in the business world, and utterly in control of everything, especially Amanda. Over the years, Greg had chipped away at her confidence, isolating her from friends, undermining her decisions, and making her feel small in the opulent mansion that now felt like a prison. Tonight was different, though. Amanda felt something inside her snap as Greg hurled yet another insult about her uselessness. The letter she had found in her late father's desk, a prenuptial agreement she hadn't even remembered signing, was her lifeline. Greg had hidden so much from her over the years, and now, as her eyes scanned the legal jargon, she realized that Greg had also made a mistake. The agreement ensured she retained a portion of the family estate, an estate that had grown significantly in value thanks to some savvy investments by her late father. The idea of being free from Greg's control was intoxicating, but Amanda wasn't sure she could muster the courage to take the necessary steps. Her heart pounded as the memory of Greg's last words echoed in her head. "You're nothing without me, Amanda. Remember that." The letter was proof that his words weren't entirely true. As the night wore on, Amanda found herself staring at the same gilded walls that had once dazzled her. Everything in the house screamed wealth and power, but it meant nothing to her now. This life had drained her, and she had endured Greg's emotional abuse for far too long. The revelation in the letter stirred something within her, a determination she hadn't felt in years. She knew she had to act, but where would she go? What would she do? Amanda looked at her phone, hesitant to reach out to the one person who had been cast out of the family, the only one who might understand. Her uncle, Roger, had been estranged from her family for nearly 2 decades after a bitter falling out with her father. Greg had made it clear that Roger was off limits, that anyone associated with him would be a stain on their reputation. But Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that Roger would know what to do. He had always been kind to her when she was young, before her father had banished him from their lives. Summoning her courage, Amanda dialed his number, unsure if he would even answer after so many years. Her heart raced with every ring until finally a gruff voice responded. "Hello? Uncle Roger, it's Amanda. I need your help." There was a long pause on the other end. "Amanda, I didn't expect to hear from you after all this time. What's going on?" The floodgates opened as Amanda explained everything, from the years of mistreatment to the discovery of the prenuptial agreement. Roger listened without interrupting, his tone softening as she poured out her heart. By the end of the conversation, Roger had made a plan. He would come to the city and meet her in a few days. But in the meantime, Amanda had to keep her discovery hidden from Greg. "You have a way out," Roger said firmly. "Don't let him see you break. You'll need to play along until the time is right." Amanda hung up the phone, her mind racing with thoughts of escape and justice. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope, but with it came fear. Greg was controlling, vindictive, and he would stop at nothing if he thought she was slipping through his fingers. The next few days were excruciating. Amanda played the role of the submissive wife, smiling through Greg's insults and walking on eggshells, all while her mind was working overtime to strategize her departure. She didn't dare touch the letter again, instead keeping it locked away in the recesses of her memory, rehearsing every clause and detail in her mind. She knew that if Greg found out before she was ready, the consequences would be disastrous. On the surface, everything remained as it had been for years. Greg went to work in his perfectly tailored suits, Amanda managed the house, and they attended business dinners where Amanda was expected to smile and nod. But beneath the facade, Amanda was waiting for the right moment to make her move. Roger arrived 2 days later, just as they had planned. He was older, his hair streaked with gray, but his presence gave Amanda a sense of security she hadn't felt in years. They met at a small cafe far from Greg's usual haunts, and Amanda felt a wave of relief wash over her as Roger embraced her. His warmth, his unwavering support, reminded her that she wasn't as alone as she had thought. Roger wasted no time. "Amanda, your father's investments. I've kept an eye on them over the years. The value of the estate has grown far more than Greg could ever realize. If you play this right, you won't just be free from him. You'll be set for life." Amanda's heart leapt. The idea of not just escaping but thriving was almost too much to comprehend. But Roger's words also carried a warning. Greg was no fool, and if he caught wind of her plan before it was finalized, he would find a way to ruin everything. As they sat together, hatching a plan for Amanda's future, she felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. This wasn't just about leaving. It was about reclaiming her life, her identity, and the wealth that Greg had tried to keep from her. The stakes were higher than ever, and Amanda knew that the moment she made her move, there would be no turning back. That night, as Amanda returned home, the mansion felt colder, more sinister. Greg was waiting for her in the living room, a drink in his hand and a smug smile on his face. "Where have you been, Amanda?" The tone in his voice sent a chill down her spine, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Just meeting an old friend," she replied, her voice steady. Greg eyed her suspiciously but said nothing more. As Amanda walked upstairs, she knew that her window of time was closing. The next move had to be hers, and it had to be soon. Amanda lay awake that night, her mind racing with the plan she and Roger had crafted. Every detail, every potential misstep haunted her thoughts. Greg had always been able to smell weakness, and if she gave him any indication that something was up, he'd crush her beneath the weight of his power. She turned her head to the side, glancing at him asleep next to her. His face, still as handsome as it had been when they first met, now seemed hollow. This was a man she had once loved deeply, but all that remained now was fear and resentment. The next morning, Amanda moved with precision, just as she had rehearsed in her head. She was careful to go about her daily routine, maintaining the facade of the dutiful wife. But beneath the surface, she was working to finalize her escape. She needed to gather all the paperwork, ensuring everything was in place. Her father's investments, the trust fund she had unknowingly been the beneficiary of, and most importantly, the prenup that would secure her a large portion of the family estate. All of it needed to be set in motion before Greg had a chance to retaliate. Greg, as usual, was oblivious. His mornings were spent in a blur of business meetings and phone calls, always convinced that Amanda was too docile to challenge him. She kept up the act, playing the part he expected while planning her liberation behind his back. Roger had arranged for a lawyer, someone discreet who had experience dealing with these kinds of high-stakes divorces. The problem was timing. Amanda had to file the paperwork without Greg knowing, and once it was done, the lawyers would move quickly to freeze assets. But the legal process would take time that Amanda wasn't sure she had. The tension in the house was palpable as the days passed. Amanda could feel Greg's eyes on her more than usual, as if he were sensing a shift in the air. She couldn't afford to falter, not now. Each day that passed felt like walking a tightrope, where one misstep could send her plummeting. Her fears were confirmed one evening when Greg came home early from the office. Amanda was in the study, sorting through some old files, when she heard the front door slam harder than usual. Her heart jumped into her throat. She quickly tucked the folder she was holding behind a stack of books, wiping her sweaty palms on her skirt. Greg appeared in the doorway, his eyes sharp. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Amanda swallowed hard. "Just going through some of Dad's old paperwork," she replied, forcing a smile. "I thought I'd start organizing things now that we're settled." Greg's gaze lingered on her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Don't waste your time with that junk," he muttered before turning and walking away. Amanda exhaled shakily. She couldn't keep this up much longer. Greg was growing suspicious, and if he found out what she was really planning, it would be over. That night, Amanda called Roger, her voice trembling as she whispered into the phone. "It's getting harder. He's starting to suspect something." Roger's voice was calm but firm. "Stay the course, Amanda. You're almost there. Everything is lined up. Just keep playing the role a little longer." The next day, Amanda made her move. With Greg out of the house for a business trip, she packed a small bag and left for the city, where she met with the lawyer Roger had arranged. Sitting in the lawyer's office, Amanda felt the weight of the years lift off her shoulders. The prenup was ironclad. The estate was hers, as long as the divorce was filed before Greg had a chance to intervene. The lawyer assured her that the process would be swift. "We'll freeze the assets as soon as the papers are filed. He won't be able to touch the estate," she said confidently. Amanda nodded, her heart pounding with both fear and relief. It was happening. For the first time in years, Amanda had control over her life. But as she left the office and returned to her car, a cold dread washed over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that Greg would retaliate in ways she couldn't anticipate. He wouldn't just let her walk away with everything. He was ruthless, and he had too much pride to allow Amanda to outsmart him. Sure enough, her fears materialized later that evening. As Amanda pulled into the driveway, she noticed Greg's car parked outside the house. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. Her stomach twisted in knots as she entered the house, the air heavy with tension. Greg was waiting for her in the living room, his expression cold and calculating. "Where were you?" he asked, his tone icy. Amanda hesitated for a moment, searching for a believable lie. "I went to the city for a meeting with the estate lawyer," she said, keeping her voice calm. Greg raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a smirk. "Really? I had a feeling you might be up to something." He stood, slowly walking toward her. "You've been acting strange lately, Amanda. I thought we were partners in everything, but now I wonder if you've been hiding things from me." Her pulse quickened, but she refused to back down. "You've never treated me like a partner, Greg. You've controlled every aspect of my life, and I'm done." For a moment, Greg's face darkened, but then, to Amanda's surprise, he laughed. "Oh, Amanda," he said mockingly. "You think you're done. You have no idea what you're up against." He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and waved it in front of her face. "Do you recognize this? It's a little something I had my lawyers draft up after I realized you might try to leave me." Amanda's heart sank as she stared at the document. It was a new will, signed by Greg, leaving her with nothing but a small allowance if she tried to divorce him. But Greg's overconfidence had blinded him to one crucial detail: the original prenup. He didn't know that Amanda had found it and had already filed the necessary paperwork. Greg's grin faltered as Amanda calmly said, "I don't need your money, Greg. I have my father's estate, and you can't touch it." For the first time in years, Greg looked genuinely shocked. His face twisted in rage, but Amanda stood her ground, her voice steady. "You've lost, Greg. I've already filed for divorce, and the estate is mine. There's nothing you can do." The realization hit Greg like a sledgehammer, and his smug arrogance evaporated in an instant. Amanda could see the fury bubbling beneath the surface, but she didn't flinch. For the first time in their marriage, she was the one in control. "You'll regret this," Greg snarled, his voice shaking with barely contained anger. Amanda simply turned and walked away, leaving Greg standing alone in the lavish mansion that had once been her prison. As she left the house, Amanda felt a sense of triumph and freedom wash over her. She had finally broken free of Greg's grasp, and her life was her own once again. Amanda left the mansion that night with a sense of liberation coursing through her veins. The weight of Greg's control, the years of manipulation, and the quiet suffering she had endured all melted away as she drove into the city. The lights of the skyscrapers flickered like a distant promise, a new life waiting for her. Her phone buzzed in the passenger seat. It was Roger. She picked up, her hand steady on the wheel. "It's done, Uncle Roger. He knows now." Roger's voice was calm but carried a tinge of caution. "Good. But be prepared for the backlash. Greg won't take this lying down." "I know," Amanda said, glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Greg's car trailing behind her. but there was nothing, just the open road and her future ahead. He's furious, but I'm not afraid of him anymore. Roger paused for a moment before speaking again. I've been thinking, Amanda. There's something you need to know about your father's estate. Amanda frowned. What do you mean? Roger's voice dropped to a lower, more serious tone. Your father didn't just leave you the estate. There's more to it. Something he entrusted me with, and I've kept it hidden until now. Amanda's heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? When your father was in business, he made some risky deals, but one of those deals paid off more than anyone could have predicted. He invested in a tech company, back when no one had even heard of them. That company is now one of the biggest in the world. Your father's shares in it are worth a fortune, far more than the estate itself. Amanda gripped the steering wheel tighter, her mind reeling. How much? Enough to set you and your children up for life, Roger said. More than you could have ever imagined. The revelation hit Amanda like a tidal wave. For years, Greg had made her feel like she was nothing, like her value was tied to him. But now, she realized she had been sitting on a gold mine, one that Greg had never known existed. It wasn't just the estate she had inherited. It was a massive financial empire. I didn't tell you before, Roger continued, because I wasn't sure you were ready. But now I see that you've become stronger, and you're ready to take control of what's rightfully yours. Amanda pulled the car over to the side of the road, her hands trembling now, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that her life had changed forever. She wasn't just escaping Greg's grip. She was stepping into a life of immense power and wealth. And Greg had no idea. Thank you, Roger, Amanda whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Roger replied. Just remember this. Greg may try to fight, but the law is on your side. And with the assets your father left you, you have the means to protect yourself and your family. Amanda hung up the phone and sat in silence for a few moments, letting the reality sink in. She was free, truly free. And now, with her father's hidden fortune, she had the means to ensure that Greg could never hurt her or her children again. The next few days were a whirlwind. Amanda moved into a temporary apartment in the city while the divorce proceedings began. The lawyers worked quickly to freeze Greg's access to the estate, and soon enough, the legal battle was in full swing. As expected, Greg fought back, viciously, hiring an army of lawyers and trying every trick in the book to block the divorce and claim the estate. But Amanda's legal team was prepared. They had the prenup, the will, and now the secret assets from her father's tech investments. Greg was outmatched, and it became clear that his arrogance had blinded him to the reality of the situation. The more he fought, the more desperate he became, and soon his once unshakable confidence began to crumble. The divorce hearings were grueling, with Greg using every opportunity to slander Amanda, painting her as a greedy, ungrateful wife. But Amanda stood tall through it all, her newfound strength carrying her through the storm. Each time Greg tried to throw her off balance, she responded with calm, calculated precision. She had learned from him, after all, learned how to navigate power plays and how to outsmart those who underestimated her. And then, in the final days of the proceedings, Greg made a fatal mistake. During one particularly heated exchange in court, Greg revealed that he had been siphoning money from Amanda's father's estate into offshore accounts for years. He had thought it was his trump card, a way to prove that Amanda was financially dependent on him. But instead, it backfired spectacularly. Amanda's legal team had been waiting for this moment. With the help of forensic accountants, they uncovered a trail of illegal activity that Greg had been hiding for years. Embezzlement, tax fraud, and money laundering, all tied back to Greg's financial dealings. The court was stunned, and Greg's once impenetrable facade crumbled in front of everyone. As the final ruling came down, Amanda was awarded full control of the estate, including the secret assets from her father's tech investments. Greg, on the other hand, was left facing criminal charges that would likely result in prison time. Amanda watched from the back of the courtroom as Greg was escorted out, his face pale and hollow. For so many years, he had been the one in control, But now the tables had turned, and Amanda was the one holding all the power. But Amanda's triumph wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. Freedom from the man who had tried to strip her of her identity, and freedom to rebuild her life on her own terms. As she stepped outside the courthouse, the sun shining down on her, Amanda felt a sense of peace wash over her. It was over. The nightmare that had been her marriage to Greg was finally behind her, and she was free to live the life she had always deserved. Over the next few months, Amanda took control of her father's estate and began using the fortune she had inherited to build a new life. She invested in businesses that supported women in similar situations. Women who had been controlled, abused, or manipulated by the men in their lives. Amanda had vowed never to let another woman feel as powerless as she once had. She also reconnected with her children, who had been caught in the middle of the divorce. For the first time in years, they saw their mother as a strong, independent woman, and their relationship blossomed in ways Amanda hadn't thought possible. And as for Greg, his empire crumbled, and his reputation was in ruins. He had lost everything: his wealth, his status, and his freedom. Amanda had moved on, but Greg was left to face the consequences of his own greed and arrogance. The final twist in Amanda's journey came months later, when she received a letter from Roger. In it, he revealed that he had known all along about the tech investments and had kept it a secret to protect her from Greg's manipulations. Roger had been the silent guardian of Amanda's future, waiting for the right moment to hand her the keys to her own destiny. The letter ended with a simple message: "You were always stronger than you thought, Amanda. Now the world will see it too." With tears in her eyes, Amanda folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. She had found her strength, her freedom, and most importantly, herself. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.